Okay, we're live. Okay. Council, thank you very much for your patience. We had some technical difficulties. If anyone in our listening public were worried about where the council went, we were here. It was imperative that we get live tonight through YouTube. We have some individuals who will be advising council tonight, and it was virtually, and it's most important that we could restore our online presence. Call the meeting to order. We'll begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land upon which we meet is the traditional territory of First Nations people who have a long-standing relationship with the land, water, and regions of Southwest Middlesex. We convey our respect to our First Nation neighbors and thank them for their contributions to our culture, community, our past, and partnerships of the future. Council, we are running a little bit behind. The meeting started at 6:22. So the chair is going to make haste. We have a lot to unpack, but I will make sure that everyone gets ample time to use their mics. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Any member of council declaring a pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we can move on. Additions to the agenda, council, are there any? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion that the regular agenda of council dated August 14th be accepted as presented. Mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Scholdice, Councillor McCallum. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Delegations and presentations. We have Graham Scott Enns reviewing our 2023 financials. They are present, and please take the floor. I see you virtually. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you could walk us through this now, we'd appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. So I am Jem Buchanan from Graham Scott Enns. I've been the engagement partner for this audit for the last few years. I will share my screen and walk through the audited financial statements. I'll present a few highlights as I go through, but if there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt me and ask as we go. And at the end, after I've gone through these statements, there are a few very brief things I am also required to share as well. So hopefully you can see my screen at this point, and I know this was also available in the agenda package. So these are the consolidated statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023 for the municipality of Southwest Middlesex. One of the things I will point out is that there were a number of required accounting standard changes this year. They were applicable to all municipalities, everyone who follows public sector accounting standards. So I'll point out how those changes affected you as I go through these statements. So I am turning to management's responsibilities for financial reporting on page 1. This is just a reminder. This is a letter that's signed by the CAO and Treasurer, just indicating that the information is ultimately the responsibility of management and that what we've prepared is based on the information we've provided. We then turn to page 2, which is the independent auditor's report. So this is what we have been engaged to do, is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. It is addressed to members of council, inhabitants, and ratepayers of the municipality of Southwest Middlesex. I'm going to focus right away on the opinion paragraph. So in our opinion, the municipality's consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2023, and the results of its operations and its cash flow for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's what we like to call a clean audit opinion. The rest of the independent auditor's report goes through the responsibilities of management, those charged with governance, which would be represented by council, and then the auditor's responsibilities for the financial statements. Assuming these financial statements are approved as part of this meeting, they will be dated today, August 14th, 2024. Turning to the consolidated statement of financial position. So this is the assets and liabilities of the municipality at a point in time, so at December 31st, 2023. So I'll just comment on a few of the year-over-year variances. One, we can see at December 31st, there was a healthy cash balance there in the bank. Last year, there was quite a bit sitting in receivables relating to government grants that were subsequently received. And so what we're seeing is a more typical cash balance. So total financial assets there, 6.8 million. Under financial liabilities, we see an increase in the deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds, and that's just the result of some unspent OCIF funding. So the plan would be that you can carry that forward and spend it in a future year, as well as some unspent building reserve, which is also an obligatory reserve fund, is sitting there as well. And you can see the breakout of that in Note 10. Landfill closure liability. So there has always been a requirement to estimate the closure liability for the landfills and to book an according liability on the financial statements. What's changed this year is the accounting standards related to that. Landfills now fall under asset retirement obligations. So we'll see when we get to Note 15 that there's more disclosure relating to this, and it's done a little bit differently. There's some new terminologies. But the main thing to point out is that the liability is quite significant, and it's been calculated the way it's required to based on the handbook standards. So it went from 3.4 million to 4.7 million this year. We have total financial liabilities of 8.8 million for a net financial debt of just over 2 million. In terms of our non-financial assets, largest of which is, of course, tangible capital assets. So in there, we have the arena is now finished, as well as some other local projects. Sewers, I think, was one of them, are sitting within that capital assets. But we can see that the work in process that was last year, mostly the arena, has now moved into tangible capital assets. So our total non-financial assets, 82,931,000. This is the first reference here, accumulated remeasurement gains and losses, to a new statement that we'll get to in a few pages, but there's no financial impact this year. So your accumulated surplus is $80.9 million. Okay, just checking for questions. Seeing that, I'll keep going. So we have the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. First thing I'll remind everyone is that the budget, which is disclosed in Note 16, is the original budget that's approved by Council, but then it's adjusted for PSAB purposes, which means capital, as an example, is changed from the way that it's budgeted when Council approves it to the way that it's presented in the statements. So just as a reminder, that's where these budgeted figures come from. We then present the actual 2023 numbers, as well as the actual numbers for the comparative period 2022. In general, for revenues, things are pretty comparable year over year, both with the budget and with the prior year figures. So that's great. No unexpected balances there. The increase in government transfers operational really relates to some new Blue Box transition funding that's included within this amount. Under the other revenue, so that includes some donations that were received. We have total revenues there of $12,351,000. Under expenses, they're broken down into the different segments that we report, and there's further details on that at a schedule at the back of the financial statements. But in general, most of the figures are in line with the budget and with the prior year. Where you'll see an increase over budget and prior years in the environmental line, and that does relate to how the increase in that landfill liability is required to be disclosed. So we have total expenses there of $13,577,000. So we have a deficit before capital items of $1.2 million. We then have government transfers related to capital, and then loss on disposal of tangible capital assets. It was really just cleaning up some assets that were no longer in use and disposing of them. We get down to excess of revenue over expenses for the year for PSAB purposes of about $760,000. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll keep going. So now we go through some of the other statements that are required, change in net financial assets, which is really just talking about some of the things I've already mentioned. And then this is a brand new statement, the statement of remeasurement gains and losses. You have no activity on this statement, but it is required to be disclosed, so it's a blank statement. The main thing that you could have on that statement is you could have, if you had investments and you had unrealized gains on those investments at year end, that's the type of thing that would be reported on this statement. So that's something you might have down the road in the future. And then we have the consolidated statement of cash flows. Getting into the notes to the consolidated financial statements, first note I'm going to draw your attention to is note 1, which is the change in accounting policies. So as I mentioned, there were a number of new accounting standards this year under public sector accounting standards. And so the 3 that really affected you were PS 1201, financial statement preparation, PS 3280, which is asset retirement obligations. So where that impacts you the most is in the landfill estimates. And then PS 3450, financial instruments. So those changes have all been reflected in these financial statements, but I wanted to highlight them for you. In terms of note 2, none of your accounting policies have actually changed. You're doing things the way you've done them before. There's just going to be some additional disclosure relating to the new accounting standards. So for example, under financial instruments, there's going to be this little level 1, level 2, level 3. And again, that's something that's required to be disclosed in your financial statements under these new standards. Okay, continuing on, I am now on note 3, which is the trust funds. I don't really have any comments on that note. What I wanted to show in note 4 and note 5 is just the breakdown of what's within taxes receivable and accounts receivable, just so you can sort of see where the year-over-year differences are coming from. Turning to note 9, accumulated surplus. This is a different way of looking at that $80 million surplus that we've talked about previously, and you can see how much of it has been invested in tangible capital assets, what's set aside in reserves, and then reserve funds that are set aside by legislation recorded there too. Then you can see the amounts to be recovered include landfill closure and post-closure costs of 4.7, and then unfunded capital. That means not funded externally or by ratepayers at this point. So we have an accumulated surplus there of 80 million. Okay. I am going to continue to contingent liabilities, note 13. So this is pretty standard wording. It's just indicating that from time to time there can be claims or lawsuits against the municipality, and at this time there is nothing to record. There's no amount that could be estimated or anything related to that. Note 14, contaminated sites. Again, this is required disclosure, and it's just indicating that the municipality has identified 2 sites that may need remediation in the future, but at this time there's no estimate for the potential liability or contingency. Note 15, asset retirement obligations, landfill closure. So this relates to your 2 landfills, Limerick and Trillium, both of which have been closed, and it's just relating to the estimated closure costs and remediation costs. So the note and the way this works is similar as under the previous standards, but it has been updated for the current standards. This is where you can see the 4.7 million that's sitting as a liability that's been accrued for the closure and monitoring required for both sites. And then just as a offset or what has been set aside, so there's currently reserve funds for Trillium of 687,000 and for Limerick of 283,000. So a bit less than the amounts that are potential to occur. Okay. Note 16, budget figures. So that's where I was mentioning you have the original approved budget by council, and then you have the adjustments to come up with the PSAB budget. The final thing I was just going to point out was the schedules at the back of the statements. Again, it's just breaking out the different types of revenues and expenditures. You can see it in a bit more detail, but in total, the revenues and expenses and the surplus are the same as presented on the statement of operations. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about the statements before I make my other required remarks.
Yes, go ahead, Martin, please. Yep.
To Jen, as far as the landfill is concerned, I see a note here that it says the inflation is 3.9% and 4%. Is that why the increase of over $1 million for the cost?
So that would be a piece of it. It has to be calculated each year. But the way it works is it also does present value calculations. So again, figuring out, because some of this costs relate to the 20 years of monitoring that's going to be required. So you sort of figure out what that's going to cost, and then you present value it back to today's dollars. And the idea is you set aside that money now, or you recognize the liability now, even though the cost won't be incurred for a while. So it is different than your cash flow that'll be expected. You'll incur those costs down the road, but the accounting standards require that you accrue them and recognize that liability now when you're aware what it might be.
Martin
Does that
has a
answer your
follow-up
question?
Martin, Councillor Vink has a follow-up. Go ahead, Martin.
So what you're saying, Jen, then is the original estimate was too low for closing the landfill?
Yes, and it's something that gets reevaluated regularly based on reports done by third parties. So they estimate what the costs might be to close the landfills, and that's what the liability is based on. So it's not something you just do once, you actually do the reports on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, proceed, Jen. Yep, keep going.
Okay, is there any other questions?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen. It'll make me a little easier to see everyone. So other than the audited financial statements and our opinion on that, we did conduct a thorough audit. We'd like to thank Kristen and her team for their assistance during our audit. And we do also issue what's called an audit findings letter, and that's been provided to council as well. And it goes through different things that we're required to comment on. The good news is that it's what I call a no issues letter, which means we had no disagreements with management, no suggested changes to accounting policies other than those that were required, no significant deficiencies in internal controls, and nothing else to report. But it's still something that I'm required to say is that we did all of that work as well, and no issues were found. So that's my final comments related to the audit. Were there any other questions for me relating to either the audit or the financial statement?
I'm looking for hands. Jen, I don't see any, so we want to thank you very much for your services, and I would be amiss not to thank Kristen for her good work as well, and we share that. Congratulations to both of you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Council, last call for questions. Seeing none, we will move on. We are on the consent agenda. Oh, Kendra, yes.
Yes, so we need a resolution to accept the audited 2023 financial statements.
We do. Council, the chair will entertain that motion. Deputy Mayor Schuldeis, seconder for that, please. Councillor Choi, questions? All in favor? Carried. The consent agenda is before us. There are 10 items. I'll read them quickly. The vouchers. I'll pause and look for hands. MLHU report. CN Rail Safety Week. Oh, yes, go ahead, Councillor Choi.
Thank you. I'd like to support this one, please.
The CN Rail?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. You bet. We have 2 rail lines going right through Middlesex County, and I think that would be a great idea. You'll move that, or is there a seconder to endorse that? Councillor Haggett, all in favor? We have endorsed the recommendation. MLHU Board of Health update. Middlesex County notice of passing of development charges bylaw. Yes, Martin, please go ahead. Yep, go ahead. Yep.
Sorry. Yes, Mayor Allen, I'd like to ask a question or two in regards to that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. I noticed there's going to be new development charges, obviously, and then there's a category that says non-farm property, and it says based on square footage. So, or non-residential property, I believe it said. I haven't got it right in front. But, so can you elaborate what's happening with commercial, industrial, and farm buildings as far as this development charge is concerned?
Without the documents in front of me, it is difficult. But I know that when we look at our assessment, we are short of industrial and commercial property. The Middlesex County has been inundated with a vast amount of residential housing, but those areas are in short supply. Jeff, have you been following this at all?
Yes, but I don't have the answer, and I'll take a look at the background report while the meeting's going on, and I may be able to answer it for you before the meeting ends.
Okay. It's in order to keep Councillor Vink, and I'm sure you'd be elated with this, in order to keep our tax rate competitive, we have to look at the revenue side of that, and so it will produce significant revenue for that. Kendra, could you add to that? How about Dan?
Through the chair to members of the council. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Fitzgerald. I'm manager of planning with Middlesex County. Maybe just to provide a little bit of background on that. So the development charge the development charge bylaw actually does include an exemption for agricultural related structures. So when it comes to farm structures, that charge that you see for the other non-residential would not be charged for agricultural buildings.
Good. Any other questions? One follow-up, Martin?
Sure, Mayor. Well, I know it's $3.64 per square foot for non-residential, which sounds like a lot of money for a bigger, say, factory or whatever. And then also it says services related to a highway. What does that mean if it's built on a dirt road what does that mean, services related to a highway?
Bridges, culverts, things of that nature. Dan, would I be correct in saying that?
Through the chair, yeah, that's absolutely correct. So this particular charge is mostly based on those engineering requirements for services that the county provides. So the road networks, the bridges, things like that, to move transportation around the county.
And during those discussions, I asked my favorite question, and I'm sure council will remember it. Will this enable us to still be competitive? And I was assured that it is, and also provide a more competitive tax structure. Oh, yeah, one more, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I didn't explain myself too well. What I meant to say was if you have a house built in the country or a house built in town, is it still the same development charge?
I believe they are, because this is a county development charges report, so it's for county services related to a highway that are county highways, not local highways. And so it's the same charge no matter where it is, because the county roads are a major, as you will all know, the county roads are a major way that people get around in our communities. They're our main collectors. And in that way, it's the same whether you're on any road that you're in a municipality, you will use the county road to get to a bigger center.
Okay. And not a duplication of the county charges are not a duplication of what municipal development charges would be. It is strictly on those arterial roads. Okay. County Council highlights. Minister of Infrastructure, the application. AMO Joint Health Resolution. And Southwest, yes, Amy, please go ahead. Councillor Joy.
Thank you. I would like to support 5H.
5H, the AMO OMA Joint Health Resolution. It's been moved by Councillor Choi. Is there a second? Councillor McGill, in favor? Carried. Southwest Middlesex Variance Report. Thank you, Kristen, for providing that. And your Wardsville Community Group request. Yes, the chair expected some questions on this. I do have some. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I've been contacted by members of some groups in the last 24 hours wondering why only one group would receive this support. In the case of the CCC, for instance, as the Mayor well knows, They work hard to solicit donations for their events. The Lions hold bingos, sell burgers, and collect bottles to pay for their events. Why do all this legwork if another group needs only to send a letter to council? I appreciate the work of this group, but granting approval to this request would be opening the gate to hard feelings and requests for support from other groups that have worked independently so far. So I will move that we decline the request.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Myers, thank you. And I too share those same concerns. I think we have to be very careful that we treat everyone in harmony, and I think it's most important. Yes, Councillor Troy, please go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if anyone could answer, I think my memory is correct, but was the grand opening of the Appin Playground during the Snap and Appin event?
It was. I was present and cut the ribbon on that, and there was several. Oh, was it? Maybe, yeah. Oh, that, okay, yeah, maybe not. I know that when we opened that playground, there was, the Glencoe District High School alumni were there cooking burgers, there was a car show, there were other things other than just cutting that ribbon, so there were several fundraising activities going on by various organizations, and some of those organizations may have even had to pay a table fee or something like that. Yes, second question.
So just to follow up to that, I think we should provide the same support that we would have for that event,
Okay,
since
we
it would
can
be very
go back
similar.
on that, too.
Whatever
Yeah,
would happen then, I
Sam,
think would be
is
fair
no longer
across the
with us.
board.
Yeah, Sam would have that information, but we can track it down. Jeff, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm going to try to help, and perhaps some of the history at the table with other councillors can help us to just work our way through this. I think there's two distinct events. There's the sort of grand opening of the playground, which is a council event, and then there's a community event that's occurring on the same day with the same people, but a separate event. And I believe that we can certainly provide picnic tables and those kinds of things that we would to a normal community event. So if those kinds of parts of the request can be supported by staff, I think those are somewhat typical, and that's the kind of thing we can do. But the part about providing insurance and things like that is where it becomes not our event. So if you want to leave it with this direction from council about what we can provide that we typically provide, we're going to do that. Kevin couldn't be here tonight, but he's intending to provide that assistance.
No, okay. Yeah, Councillor Troy, again.
Thank you. And are these requests typically just run through staff, and it doesn't usually need council's approval?
Kendra?
I guess if it is involving the everyday operations of staff, it would not need council approval. The idea of the insurance, I think the porta potty, can you move that up so I can see it? Sorry. And the liability, the printing, like the extra stuff that any other user group would have to pay for. Those were the things that Amanda had let your Wardsville know they would need additional approval from council, because those are above and beyond what staff would do kind of every day. The extra picnic tables, the ensuring the grass is cut, those are kind of things that staff would do without being asked if they know an event's happening. So that is why the letter came before you.
Okay, last call for questions. There's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Moved by Deputy Mayor Schuldice, seconded by Councillor Myers. Yep. Last question. Yep.
Is your motion similarly to what Jeff had said? Like, are you agreeable to that?
For staff to help out with picnic tables and whatnot, yeah, no, that's quite all right. Yep.
I think to emulate Tartan Days would be a fine example where all the breakfast, pancake suppers, things like that, breakfast rather. And yeah, our guys and girls worked hard to accommodate them.
And I would say we can take that as direction rather than needing a motion to provide that sort of typical support.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. I do not. No, I do not. Okay. All right, Four Counties Transportation Service is not on my agenda. Mark, would you like to speak to this at all, or is everything under control?
Yeah, I just wanted that included in the consent agenda so everybody could see the financial information and the usage. And Southwest Middlesex continues to be the main user of Four Counties Transit.
Yep, okay. All right, that concludes the consent agenda. Then the adoption of the consent agenda, with the exception of those that have been pulled out and voted on by council. Is there a mover and a seconder to adopt the balance of the consent agenda? Councillor Vink, Councillor Choi, all in favor? Carried. Before I go any further into the agenda, Council, I just want to draw your attention to a name on the screen. Amanda Gubbles, our new CAO, is looking on virtually. She is on some holidays that had been prearranged prior to her hiring, and we're delighted to have her as our CAO. I know she has Council's endorsement, and Amanda, if you're listening to us, we're looking forward to you coming back. And we're glad to have you as a part of Southwest Middlesex. Committee of Adjustments, Council, there are none. Public meetings. A meeting to consider the McCallum drain. There's some protocol in respect to this. We're very pleased to have Mike DeVos with us tonight from Spreet & Associates. Mike, will you give an overview of the work required when you're ready? Okay. Okay. And you have to click on the attachments to get the on the public meetings, yes, to get the report. And hopefully it'll be on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. The report before you for the McCallum drain is a report prepared under both Sections 4 of the Drainage Act and Section 78. Section 4 is used to construct a new municipal drain, or portions of the drain being new. There are new branches referred to as branches A1 and A2. They are on the south side of Hyman Drive, where we are rerouting some water that would go through the existing branch A. That was requested by some landowners. And then there's also work on other portions of the existing McCallum drain. The McCallum drain itself consists of a main drain and several branches. It serves an area in lots 9 to 12, on both sides of Hyman Drive. It has an outlet in a natural water course at the downstream end in the Noseworthy property, and then heads upstream, going out of the valley in the natural water course and running through the Howe property, across Hyman Drive, up through the McCallum property, Howe property, and the Walsh property. There's a number of branches there. A few of the branches have been requested to be replaced. In total, there's about 3,900 meters of tile with the main and the branches that have been requested to be replaced. The existing drain was constructed in 1976, but the landowners felt that it should be replaced in its entirety due to cost savings that might not be realized if you try to twin pipes and have water share. You're going to be spending money to try and do that. And the landowners felt, because of the age and the costs involved with trying to do that, it would be better to replace it. There are going to be portions left as part of this particular drain. The 1976 drain will be partially there. It'll still function the way that it was intended to function at that time. The design standards have increased significantly since the 1970s due to subsurface drainage, the inclusion or the expectation of trying to put more surface water into these tile drains. Tile drains, I caution landowners, are still considered low flow pipes. They're not large, they're not intended to take large rain events. During those large rain events, the significant flows will still be on the surface or pond in areas and wait till the tiles can catch up. So that's one thing that I caution landowners on. When we do these reconstructions, we do put catch basins along the way, both to allow surface water into the drain, provide inspection points and air. The pipes function better with air being entering into the drain at several locations. The existing drains, where they're being worked on, will be destroyed as part of the project. Where possible, there may be a few areas that it's not practical to do that, so they would be abandoned in those particular locations. There are a couple places where we have to cross an old railway bed that is now owned by a different owner than the original railway, but there still is significant cost to reconstruct a drain through the railway bed, so that's taken place and being charged in that manner, that there is extra cost to due to what's been built in the past. And I think at that point I'll stop and open up to questions.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Mike. Questions from any affected property owners? Please feel comfortable in asking any questions. We can direct them through the chair to Mike. Mike, you must have done your work. We can move on. Council members' remarks, are there any? Yes, Deputy Mayor Scholdeis.
Just one quick question, Mayor Mayhew, thank you. I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit, Mike, on why is there an extra cost to dig through the rail bed? Is there something I'm missing other than just digging through?
Yes, the rail beds themselves are elevated and constructed at a much higher elevation, and the existing pipes that are in there are deep as well. So just the physical excavation work and the backfilling and compacting to do that. And because of the depth, we typically use sewer pipe as well, a stronger pipe.
And then it would be put back to original condition?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions from council?
Back to the original, the way it was before we started the dig. It was a yes. Okay.
Okay. Yep. We'll come back to you on that, Mike. Are there any oral or written submissions, Kendra? None? Okay. And we'll let Mike catch up with us. Here, Mike, go ahead.
Yes, it is being put back, and it is original material. Yeah.
And the applicant's final remarks, it's an opportunity for the applicant to address council if he so wishes. Okay, seeing none, council, in the those present. Oh, request from those present to add or delete their names from the petitions. We've got none. Okay, we are in the fifth and final of the five-step process on the McCallum drain. A decision of council to give a first and second reading by bylaw if it is passed. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Haggett, Councillor Vink. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Carry. Okay, Mike, thanks very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Dan, you're soon on here. 7B, P7 zoning bylaw amendment, 3875 Parkhouse Drive. Could you advise council, Dan, of the purpose and effect of this application?
Yeah, through the chair. Like I mentioned before, for everyone that doesn't know me, my name is Dan Fitzgerald. I'm a manager of planning with Middlesex County. Just here tonight filling in for Elena, who happens to be away on a well-deserved vacation. So the purpose and effect of this particular application, which is zoning bylaw amendment P7/2024, is to rezone the subject lands from a general agricultural zone to a site-specific agricultural zone, which does seek to permit a reduced interior side yard setback of 13.5 meters, whereas 15 meters is required. And it also seeks to establish a permanent farm labor accommodation through the addition of 4 new permanent structures for housing. So as council may be aware, the subject lands are located on the south side of Parkhouse Drive, east of Tower Ave, and they have a frontage of approximately 800 meters along Parkhouse Drive in an area of approximately 48.4 hectares. The lands do contain a barn, a shed, and as mentioned, a greenhouse operation that is currently under construction on the lands. It has a floor area of approximately 51,000 square meters. And this greenhouse is part of phase 1 of a 4-phase project in which the balance of the lands are continued to be used for agricultural purposes, generally field crop production. So the subject lands in this case are predominantly located within the agricultural land use designation of Southwest Middlesex official plan. But I would note that a small portion of the lands is also located within the urban settlement area of Glencoe, and it is designated industrial. The subject lands are predominantly zoned general agricultural, again, a small portion being zoned general industrial, as well as the site-specific rural industrial M3-4 zone within the municipality's zoning bylaw. So the proposed farm labor accommodation buildings is to be constructed in phases, and they are proposed to be limited to a maximum overall size of 2,960.8 square meters. And that would accommodate approximately 128 workers on site. So to support the proposal, the applicant reviewed the existing housing stock, and they did note that there is a potential lack of dwelling units within the community for this particular use. So additionally, they did conduct a D6 study, and that was completed to show that there would be no impact of this particular development within proximity of the existing industrial uses, as required by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So staff have reviewed the proposal against the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, as well as Southwest Middlesex official plan. I would note that farm worker accommodation, being temporary or permanent, is considered an agricultural use by provincial policy. As indicated in the planning report, the property is generally considered to be agricultural and does permit such uses. The site-specific general agricultural zone would add permissions for permanent farm labor accommodation, but it would also limit the amount to ensure efficient and orderly development within the community. So additionally, the reduced interior side yard setbacks are generally not anticipated to cause any negative impacts on adjacent parcels. So it is noted that one comment was received following the completion of the planning report. The individual noted that they were opposed to the potential rezoning on this particular parcel, and I believe that letter was forwarded to council in advance of tonight's meeting. So given the above, and for the reasons that were concluded in the planning report, I am recommending approval of zoning bylaw amendment P7/2024, and recommend that a bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. At this point, the applicant will be allowed the opportunity to speak if he so wishes. Okay, that's good. No, you're being well looked after. Council members' remarks, are there any? Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Here, just one quick question. I just want to make sure I'm reading the map correctly. My eyes aren't that good. These housing units will be when you go into Industrial Road to the right? That's correct. Okay, that's what I thought. And there'll be 4 of them there to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
through the chair, that's
good.
absolutely correct. As you kind of come in there, it's on the right-hand side, kind of towards that, I guess it would be the southwestern boundary of the property.
Yep.
And the intent there is to keep them kind of as far away from the future industrial phases of the greenhouse operation. So they have them in a little corner of the site, which we want to achieve to allow for that ultimate phase build-out of the greenhouse over the entirety of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Vink?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. What does interim servicing method mean? So is there a time limit to that? And also, a follow-up on that, is there going to be, once it's connected, is there going to be a bit of a pumping station there?
Yeah, so through the chair, in this particular instance, because a portion of the property is within the urban settlement area, we definitely wanted to see these units be serviced with municipal sanitary services as opposed to, private septic systems, especially given the volume and the number of units that are involved in this particular case. So when we say interim servicing solution in this instance, the general idea and goal is that all of these units will eventually be serviced with municipal sanitary services. The problem is the existing, and maybe Morrow can jump in on that, but I believe the existing pump station doesn't have the capacity for that. So when we talk about the interim solution, what we're talking about is the developer is only, or sorry, the landowner is only building a certain number of units at this particular point in time, which has already been allocated servicing capacity for phase 2, 3, or 4 of the greenhouse development. So the idea would be when those phases of the greenhouse development come forward, there would need to be an upgrade to that existing pump station. So they're currently going to use the capacity that's allocated elsewhere for the greenhouse development, but when they want to do that next phase, that upgrade would have to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add to that. I've been dealing with the engineer with the greenhouse site, and they have already been allocated a capacity, and they're going to use that allocation and work with the construction of the migrant worker home within that number. So they've already been allocated a certain number, so they're just going to design everything to incorporate just with the number that they already have.
Okay, thank you, Morrow. Yep, okay, yes, one more point. Go ahead, Dan, please.
Yeah, through the chair, just as another follow-up to that, what I would also advise council is that this particular site will be subject to site plan control. So that will lay out the parameters as to how much capacity they can use for this particular site, how many units they can service, and then it would flip over based on, if you want to do the ultimate design of the additional greenhouses, then that upgrade has to occur. So there will be assurances registered on title through site plan agreements as to how that's going to operate between, swapping sanitary capacity at this particular point in time.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. Oral and written submissions. Council has been advised that there was one concern expressed. Applicant's final remarks. It's necessary to ask, and thank you very much for your presence this evening. It is council's, is the agent present on the screen? Yes, if the, by all means, Wayne or
Eric and Jay.
Eric Steele? Yeah, would you like to weigh in here, Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric Steele from Monty Thron Pine Consultants on behalf of our client, the applicant. Staff have given a fairly detailed overview of the application, so I won't go into too much more further detail. We'll just thank staff for their work and process in the application, and to have you answer any questions from members of council.
Is there a timeline? Is there a timeline on this? What are we looking at? What do you envision this manifesting itself?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we're currently working through the stage of having the zoning approved, and then looking to soon submit a application for site plan control to amend the current approval that was granted for the first phase of the greenhouse operation. And once that approval is granted, we would be able to look to moving forward with any kind of future construction.
Yeah, Amy, go ahead. Councillor Troy.
Thank you. I'm not sure exactly who would this be directed to. Would there be consideration of installing a sidewalk along there, considering that it is a housing units? And who would be covering that cost?
That would be a part of site plan control. It could be brought up, I suppose. Yep, if you think there's a need. Yep.
Yeah, that can certainly be what council wishes that we could add to the site plan conditions and agreement, if that's the direction. At this time, I'm not aware of that condition being made, but we can certainly add that condition if that's council's direction.
Maybe. It is a valid point, but it may be premature at this point.
It's, if you don't mind me waiting, I think it's a really good one to raise at the pre-consultation meeting. I think you've heard what council's kind of expecting at the end of the process. So it's good for Rob and the agents to be aware that council is concerned about the movement of people and the connection of this residential use to our existing sidewalk network.
Yes, Martin, please go ahead. Councillor Vink.
In light of the fact of the one letter that came in, would these bunk houses have any effect on the industrial land across the creek? For instance, if somebody wants to put up a factory and, and they have a night shift and there's a lot of noise, would that have any effect?
Yeah, so through the chair, in terms of zoning, the easy answer is yes, it will. But the alternative to that answer is it's kind of, you get your approvals in place and then you have to deal with whatever the surrounding development is after the fact, right? So in this particular instance, there's obviously, some industrial that's there that they are having to deal with mitigation on. However, in the future, on those industrial sites, they will then have to have regard for residential uses and have to design themselves according to the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Parks standards for noise mitigation. So absolutely, it will potentially impact neighboring land uses.
If I may also just add to that note, as through the mayor to the councillor, as part of our planning justification report, we did examine the proposed development against the Ministry of Environmental Conservation and Parks D6 guidelines, which include recommendations of providing buffer setbacks between industrial and sensitive uses, such as residential uses. And note that the vacant industrial lands to the west are separated from the subject lands by the Glencoe Outlet Drain, which requires a minimum of 30 meters setback to any buildings or structures, which our proposed farm accommodation buildings do meet. And so that would provide approximately a buffer of 60 meters, which would align with the recommendations of the D6 guidelines, which provide certain setbacks between Class 1 and Class 2 industrial facilities. So while there is no current development taking place in those vacant lands, that the proposed use does take that kind of mitigation measure into consideration as part of our proposal.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Questions, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. If I could just follow up with Eric. So there would be no effect past the 60-meter buffer zone? I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, so the any kind of future development, as Mr. Fitzgerald's noted, would have to do appropriate study based on the specific industrial use, but that are the setback that's required or that is recommended under the current D6 guidelines would be similar to what's currently would be required through the zoning between the proposed firm work accommodations and any future industrial use.
So that's 60 meters?
I think it's just the minimum guideline is 70 meters in the guidelines, but we're proposing 60, which is sort of similar distance for those industrial uses.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, Council. recommendation has been put before you that the zoning for permanent buildings for farm labor accommodation has been, the recommendation is before you. Is there a mover and a seconder to proceed with this? Yes. Deputy Mayor Schuldice? Councillor Haggett? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presence. Thank you, Dan. It's nice to have you. Now, we are on the Falconbridge Drive, PA zoning bylaw amendment, 5849 Falconbridge Drive. Could you apprise council of the purpose and effect of this application?
Yes, through the chair to members of council. So the purpose and effect of this application for zoning bylaw amendment P8/2024 is to implement a condition of consent, and that being B4 2024, which conditionally severed a lot with an area of approximately 0.42 hectares or 1 acre in area in order to accommodate the disposal of a surplus farmhouse dwelling. So the effect of the bylaw would be to establish a rural residential zone to the surplus dwelling while also rezoning the retained farmlands to an agricultural A2 zone, which prohibits the establishment of new dwellings on the retained farmlands. So the subject lands are located on the southwest side of Falconbridge Drive, east of Mayfair Road and Springfield Road, and are municipally known as 5849 Falconbridge Drive. They contain an existing single detached dwelling, a detached garage, as well as a metal-clad structure. The lands are serviced by privately owned well and septic systems, and the retained lands contain agricultural land and crop production, as well as a concrete barn located approximately 5.64 meters from the side lot line, being the eastern lot line to the severed parcel. The retained lands are approximately 9.7 hectares in size, or 24 acres. So staff have reviewed the proposal against the provincial policy statement, as well as the county's official plan and Southwest Middlesex official plan. As a result of the surplus dwelling severance, the proposal does meet the requirements of all aforementioned planning documents and does represent sound land use planning. So as indicated in the planner's report, staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and also recommend that the bylaw be brought forward for council's consideration this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The applicant, if he's present or she is present, is allowed to speak at this point, or his representative? None? Council members' remarks, any questions, concerns? Kendra, no oral or written submissions? Council's decisions, the recommendation has been circulated and put before you. On the zoning issue, is there a mover and a seconder? Okay, McCallum, McGill, thank you. All in favor? Carried. We are now 7D, zoning amendment regarding bylaw amendment Stella Ave. The purpose and effect of this zoning bylaw, Dan, could you walk us through it, please?
Yeah, through the chair, mayor to members of council. So the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment, being P9/2024, is in support of a requested red line amendment to the existing approved draft plan of subdivision on the subject lands known as Stella. This is represented as County Subdivision File 39T-SM2101. So the zoning bylaw amendment proposes to rezone the existing residential second density, or R2H1 holding provision 1, as well as the residential second density R2-3H1 holding provision zones to a residential first density R1-3H1 zone, as well as a public utility zone for the proposed pump station to be located on the west side of the development. I would note that the existing open space zone, or OS zone, on the east side of the property would be consistent with the stormwater management blocks and would remain unchanged. So the effect of the proposal is to implement a proposed red line amendment to the previously approved draft plan of subdivision, So as revised, this proposal does seek to amend the original draft plan approved boundaries of the lots to achieve 52 single detached residential lots, as well as blocks 54 and 55 for stormwater management, and block 53 to be used for a pumping station, which would be used to service the proposed lots, as well as additional future residential development on adjacent parcels. So while the current zoning and draft plan of subdivision accommodate a mix of semi-detached dwellings and single detached, the revised draft plan and proposed zoning would limit development to single detached dwellings only. The lands are located on the northeast side of Stella Ave. They are bordered by institutional and residential uses to the northwest, residential uses to the west and southwest, industrial uses to the southeast, and future development lands to the northeast. While the county is currently reviewing the proposed red line amendment, considered as minor, as the approval authority, I would note that the applicant requires the lands to be rezoned so that the lots are capable of meeting the zoning requirements of the R1 zone. So also, the addition of the utility block will accommodate the installation of a sanitary pump station, which would help unlock future development potential within this particular area. So, as noted in the planning report, staff are of the opinion that the requested zoning bylaw amendment will maintain conformity with the residential policies within the official plan, as the single detached dwellings are generally proposed, which is considered to be a form of low-density development housing, and low-density development housing types are considered to be the primary and predominant use within the residentially designated areas of Glencoe. So I do note that staff have received comments from the public related to this particular development proposal and in concert with the red line amendment. However, I would say that staff have addressed all comments directly with the members of the public, and they indicated that they were satisfied with the answers that were received. So as such, I am recommending approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application, that being P9/2024, and also recommend that the implementing bylaw be brought forward for consideration this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Council, we're pleased to have Jamie Robertson with us this evening virtually. Jamie, I understand you are representing the applicant, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair.
Thank you, and welcome to Southwest Middlesex, and if you wish to engage in discussion, great time to do it now.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. I'd just like to thank staff for their work on this file, and I'm available to answer questions as needed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And we have been advised that our council members' remarks at this point in time. Council, any questions you wish to address to Dan or to Mr. Robertson? Yes, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just wondering, would the pumping station be built before any building permits be issued?
Yeah, through the chair, great question. So typically, I would say the order of operations for subdivision development is that it has to be serviceable. So in this particular instance, I would defer to maybe Morrow to comment on that, but I would think that as part of the subdivision agreement, that infrastructure would have to be installed first before an actual building permit can be issued for a single detached residence.
Yeah, that is correct. Wayne and myself are working with the developer in a cost-sharing agreement for the pump station. So the pump station will be built first prior to any building permits.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Just with Wayne's name being mentioned there, Wayne, I understand you are with us virtually, and I just want to thank you very much for visiting Southwest Middlesex tonight. I just want to apprise council that you will not be with us that much longer. Your journey is taking you to the east, and we're going to miss you very much. We want to thank you for the services that you have provided this municipality over the years, and you have big shoes to fill. Wayne, would you like to enter into the discussion in terms of this agreement?
I can, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, well, Morrow is exactly correct. So perfect answer there. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for the well wishes and the sentiment. It's greatly appreciated. You know, it's been wonderful serving you, and I know the office will continue to provide service. But it's been my pleasure. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council decision. The recommendation has been made and circulated before you. What's your wish? Two councilors on the end, Councilor Haggett, Councilor Myers. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Staff reports. We have, we're on 8. Jeff, step in if I'm misleading council here. 8A, administration, the Lachlan Glen subdivision agreement, verbal updates to be provided to council. Dan, are you speaking to this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that will be, Wayne's going to give us a brief
Okay,
little
Wayne?
overview on this
Okay,
agreement.
Thank you, Wayne, for that. Yeah,
Yeah, well, through you to Mr. Mayor, thanks for having me back again, and good evening to council. I thank you for allowing me to appear virtually this evening, and I just have a very brief address for you on this one. So before you in your packages is the Lachlan Glen subdivision agreement. As you'll recall from draft plan approval time, this subdivision provides for 35 single detached lots and a medium density block that is subject to a future site plan control and development agreement at phase 1. And at phase 2, it provides for 51 single detached lots. And at phase 3, it provides for 16 semi-detached lots. So that is 135 lots in total, plus the medium density block. And as per usual, the subdivision agreement provides that servicing be in place prior to the commencement of construction of each phase. And the agreement requires the developer to obtain all required approvals and to design and construct to the municipality's satisfaction all necessary works as set out in the engineering drawings, which are at Schedule E of the agreement. And legally speaking, I can confirm for you that all the regular protections that are normally in a subdivision agreement and which a municipality needs in a subdivision agreement are present in this one. And should council have any legal advice and questions, those I can answer those in closed if there are any. But if there aren't any, council may discuss or proceed to vote on the bylaw approving a subdivision agreement as set out later in this meeting. And with that, I will leave it in council's hands just to see if there's any other questions or direction.
Okay. Council, you have heard Mr. Mahar's comments. Jeff, in order to put this on the record, can we receive that report for information and have it moved to second it? Would that work?
Yes, and I'm anticipating that if there are any questions that anyone would like to flag that they intend to ask in close, you should mention that now. I don't anticipate there are any, but if there are, if you could let us know. Councillor Haggith, are you going to have a question you want to ask in close later, a legal question? You can, and Wayne can tell you whether or not it could be enclosed, I guess.
So if this is accepted, can you put shovels in the ground? Like, can they start?
Not until the pumping station goes in.
The answer is they can.
Infrastructure, yeah.
The answer, they can start commencing the servicing, which, and once the service is installed, then they can go with the rest, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, a motion, I record the chair asked for a mover to receive the report for information. The mover and a seconder? McCallum and Councillor Choi. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Wayne, thank you very much. I appreciate your presence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on, 8B, Finance, there's no report. 8C, Public Works, no report. But Maura, we're certainly glad you're with us this evening. Andrew, we're working our way towards you with the McCallum drain, and it looks like a section 78 has been asked. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
I'll let you walk us through it.
This is in response to a request that was submitted to the municipality for an improvement on the McCallum drain. As mentioned in last council meeting, this is a drain that is from 1950, and it is no longer serving the people within the watershed, the properties within the watershed. The financial implications, there are no municipal roads that are within the watershed that contribute towards this currently. There is a county road that is served by this drain. At this point, I would like to go to the recommendation that council appoint Spreet and Associates under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for Concession 4, Lot 23 to reconstruct all or part of the McCallum drain. And I'm open for questions if
Thank you.
there are any.
Andrew, Council, questions to Andrew, directed through the chair on the McCallum drain. Are there any? Recommendation has been made. Is there support for the recommendation from a councillor? Councillor Myers, seconded by Councillor Haggett. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Andrew. Continuing on, for your second report is on the Raycraft Winship Drain and McGregor Drain, the tender award.
Yes, so just for clarification, both are on the same report. I don't know if council wants to vote on them separately or together.
I think separately. The chair would like them separately, if you would, please.
So with regards to the Raycraft Winship Drain, you can see before you the dates that were involved with issuing the tender for the reconstruction of a bridge and part cleanout. And you can see the numbers before you, the lowest tender and the recommended submission that has been reviewed by Spreet's office is from McNally Excavating for $22,600, and the start date would be between this fall to this spring on the Raycraft Winship Drain. If there are any questions, I'm open for them.
Yes, Council, do you wish to take up Andrew's invitation there? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder in regard to the recommendation that's been made? Councillor Vink, Councillor Myers, last call for questions. All in favor? Thank you, Andrew, very much for putting those to bed for us. Kendra, go ahead, please. Yes.
So I think you wanted two separate motions for the two drains.
Yeah.
So Andrew will have to present now the award for the McGregor.
Okay, McGregor. Okay, yep. Go ahead then, Andrew. Yeah, Raycraft drain. Yeah, McGregor drain. I see. Yeah. Okay, go ahead with the McGregor drain tender if you have any information to convey to council.
Yes, thank you. I must apologize. There was a slight hiccup with the company structure with regards to the acceptance of this, potential acceptance. The lowest bid on the McGregor drain was from C. Robert Robinson Limited, and that has been confirmed by Spreet's office for the tender price of $122,539 before HST, and the time frame of work would be this fall, so potentially soon, September to October. This is below the engineered estimate that has been before us here. The engineer's estimate is $158,500 for HST. So I will leave it there. If there are any questions, I'm here for them.
Council, you've heard our drainage inspector's comments on that. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. The question is for Andrew. I know we've dealt with Robinson Drainage before, but is this C. Robert Robinson? Have we dealt with them before?
Yes.
It is.
Robertson Farm Drainage is another company.
Separate.
separate. They are related, but separate.
Okay, thanks. The recommendation's been put before you, council. What's your wish? Thank you, Councillor Myers. Seconder, Councillor Haggett. All in favor? Carried by council. Okay, notice of motions in discussions with Kendra. There is none. I've been advised of none. Correspondence and petitions. There is none. Unfinished business. There is none. New business. I want to thank the councillors who withdrew the consent agenda items and dealt with them immediately. We can move on from there. No new business with regard to consent. County Council and conference updates. There are none. Council, I'll give you a minute to digest this. Announcements. Seeing none. Council, I'd just like to make one, I may be stretching the terminology of announcement, but I want to say this before we go into closed session. This is a very historic council meeting we had tonight. And I'll tell you, the communities of Southwest Middlesex will never look the same when all these things, if they come to fruition, what this council have decided tonight. This is going to be a major boost to our assessment on all levels. It will provide a gateway into the future that will make us a more viable and exciting community. And I want to thank you all for the work that you've done tonight. And I know that applause to staff on this too, because I know that this takes a long time before it gets to us. And Morrill, Jeff, and all those, and Kristen and Kendra, that I know you work tirelessly to bring these forth. At times, I know council sometimes gets criticized that things move slowly, but there's a reason for that. We're not spending our own money, we're spending the people's money. But this is a legacy that we will leave tonight, and I want to thank council and staff for that. Okay, moving on. We are going to go into closed session at 7:39 p.m. as per section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001 to consider the following: personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, S2392B, a proposed or pending acquisition of disposition of land by the municipality, S239, bracket 2, bracket C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, S239, bracket 2, bracket C, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, S239, bracket 2, bracket F. Council, if the chair asks for a motion that we go into closed session at 7:40, as per section 239 of the Municipal Act, to consider the items I've just presented. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor McCallum, Councillor Haggett, all in favor? Carried.